Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to today's meeting. I'm Councillor Jason Charity, Chair of the Elections and Democratic Structures Committee. Before we commence, I would like to outline the domestic arrangements for the meeting. We're not expecting a fire practice today. If the alarm sounds, please leave the building by way of the fire exit, through the doors at the rear of the chamber. When you've left the chamber, proceed down the stairway to the exit through the emergency exit on the ground floor. If there is anyone with mobility issues, please wait in the refuge area at the top of the stairs where the emergency evacuation lift is located, and use the intercom situated to the left-hand side of the lift doors to call for assistance. The designated assembly point is in the public square in front of CAST, just beyond the fountain. Today's meeting will be audio-visually recorded. By entering the council chamber, you accept that you'll be recorded and your images retained and broadcast by the council on its website and on YouTube. If anyone intends to record or film any part of today's meeting, please ensure that this does not disturb the conduct of the meeting and only focus on recording those people participating. Maybe just as a reminder, if you've got mobile phones, please turn them off or put them to silent. Agenda item number 1, apologies. We have apologies from Councillor Khan. Do we have apologies from anyone else? No more apologies. Agenda item number 2, to consider the extent to which the press and public are to be excluded. There are no exempt items on today's agenda. Agenda item number 3, declarations of interest, if any. Does anyone wish to declare an interest in an item of business on today's agenda? If so, please declare it now and complete the usual form following the meeting. Please contact Rachel Wright, who can assist you in the process. Anything to declare? Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of February 2025. Can we agree the minutes of the last meeting as a true and accurate record? And I'm probably going to not lead the witness, but look at Gemma. I think you might have been present at that meeting, Gemma.
That's correct, Chair. Yes, I would say they were correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 5, Trina. I think you're introducing this item.
Thanks, Chair. So I know we've had the election results from May at council meeting. This report just gives the opportunity to give a bit more information that's not necessarily discussed at the council meeting, a little bit more on stats and figures and things that happened for those elections. So I'm not going to go through in too much detail, not the results and things, but perhaps more the things that wasn't included in those reports. So there were really big elections for Doncaster, as you know. There was 360 seats up in total, so a lot of vacancies. And across the 3 elections, we've had 495 valid candidates and 2 that withdrew, so 497 in total. It's a really big project. It's a small core elections team, and we do have really good support from the rest of the council and external people to help with the elections. It's just to give you an idea of what's involved, how many the electorate is, what postal votes and turnout we had. So by each election, for the mayoral, we had 12 candidates that stood, so that's more than we usually have. There was 227,496 electors that could vote at the election, and of those, there was 55,868 that had postal votes. Postal votes for the mayor and the ward were sent out in combined packs, and the parish ones were sent out separately. And we had 33,966 returned. That gives us a 60%, just over 60% turnout on postals, which is more than what we've had for quite some time, so it was an increase. 39,440 electors cast their votes in the 167 polling stations that we had across the city. And we had a total of 73,406 ballot papers verified, so a 32% turnout. For the ward councillors, there was 216 candidates that we had for the 55 vacancies. And this just gives you a bit of a breakdown of postal vote rejections. So I've put them out there in categories. I'm not sure if you know about how the rejections work, but certainly if you go to the postal vote processing, what happens is signatures, date of births that people put on their postal votes and return to us are scanned onto our system, and any that don't auto-match are flagged up, and then a person actually looks at those and verifies them. So nothing goes through the system or rejected without somebody actually looking at them. So in total we had 305 packs, so that would have been for mayor and borough that came in and that were rejected, and all the reasons are on there as to why. The most common one that we have with these that are rejected are the ones that often don't sign them or put the date that they actually signed them instead of the date of birth, so quite a common thing for every election. And something else that a lot of people don't know is we don't ever open those ballot papers. We never see those ballot papers when they've been rejected, and we do have a lot of people ring up and say, you've rejected my vote because of who I voted for. So we do say to those people, we don't know who you voted for, we've never seen them, come in and have a look at your statement if you know you've got any issues. And they can actually open their ballot paper envelope when they come in as well and see that. So just wanted to give you that breakdown so you could see what those were. The town and parish councillors, there's 37 town and parish councils in Doncaster, and we have 55 wards. That's a total of 304 seats. So again, all those were up. And out of those 55 parish wards, 47 were uncontested. So all those candidates were automatically elected. We had 199 candidates that were automatically elected, and on polling day we had 8 wards contested, 168 candidates, 18 polling stations, and 167 of those 18 were issued with ballot papers for these 55, for the 8 contested wards out of the 55. We also had rejected ballot papers for the town and parish councillors. I've not done a list of this because I would have had to list them all by the 8 wards and the breakdown. If you do want any of them individually, let me know and we can provide that for you. As usual for Verification Account, we had the race course, as you know, as most of you attended. We did the mayoral overnights and the ward and the parish on the Friday. We had a lot of positive comments about the counts. It's very difficult when we have all outs because it's hard to see, like when you see a mayoral, you see piles for candidates. With all outs, there's no way of cutting a ballot paper up and putting them into candidates, so it's really difficult. And we use counting sheets, and hopefully you attended, you could see how the counting sheets worked. They're quite clear, they're quite big, you can see votes adding up on the counting sheets. And then the block votes, you can see how they're piled up if we do have party block votes. We had a lot of staff. We had staff working on all the roles across postal vote opening, polling stations and counts, more than 1,300 people. So they are really big, significant work involved with lots of people helping out. All the results are at Appendix A if you do want to see the breakdown, along with the postal vote turnouts for May's elections. We also had another election on the 12th of June. It wasn't contested. That was because we received no nominations at all, not one, for Hickleton Parish Council. So when that happens, because they don't have any councillors, they're not able to do anything, they're not quorate, they can't co-opt, so we had to do a rerun of the election, and luckily 5 nominations came in for the 5 vacancies, so we didn't have an election, and those 5 candidates were automatically elected without contest. And because we're always busy in elections, my motto, as I keep saying to Scott and Damien, is it's not one day a year job, it's continuous with elections and everything else. We have a by-election next week. So our first one after May's elections, we've got Hatfield Town Council, Dunscroft Ward by-election, the 24th of July. Postal votes were dispatched last week for that one. We've got 2 polling stations at Kingsbourne Green Communal Hall. There's an electorate of 4,897, and of which 1,299 are postal voters. So at the next meeting, we will give you an update of the results, the postal vote rejections, etc. For that election. I've put a little bit of a deadline, key deadline on there of just what's happening and when. And again, those results will be published on our website after the results from the count next Friday. And then just also to say we've after this report was written, we've had a resignation for a ward councillor. So we've also got that vacancy up at the moment. We've not had it called, and should it be called, I would then send something out to all members and we publish on the website when that election would be. But until we have 2 electors from within Doncaster call it, we don't have an election for that one yet, for the Bentley ward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Trina. Any comments or questions for Trina? Gemma.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I just want to say thank you very much to you and your team and the volunteers for the election period. It was a lot of hard work, and particularly the round election day and the counts as well. It must have been very long days. So thank you very much on that one. Just a quick question on one of the reports. I noticed it's about 305, I think you said, that were rejected. Is that quite, to me it sounds quite high, but is that about average for a local election?
It's actually much lower than last time. Yeah, so I would say probably half of last time. I'd have to have a look at the figures. I think people are getting more and more used to what they need to do. There was a bit of an increase when we moved from, we used to have 19 for the date of birth, but obviously when we reached where people that was born 2000 upwards could vote, it kind of confused a lot of people, and that's when we started to have an increase of people writing a lot, more the dates and things. But I think people have got more and more used to it, so it has come down again now.
Thank you, Trina. I think, Nick, are you next in line for a question?
Thank you. Do you feel is this the election where we turned from having the second preference? Was this the first all-out for the Doncaster Mayor? Do you think that had an impact on the amount of spoiled ballots? Because usually when people had the second preference or things, that used to create a few problems for people, perhaps not, voting in the right way or voting just for the second preference only, and therefore the vote was rejected. Do you think the change back to just first past the post actually reduced the number of spoiled ballots effectively?
I think that Doncaster electors, when it was second preference, had actually worked it out. And I think they actually purposefully spoiled second preference ballot papers. To be perfectly honest, they chose not to fill them out. They wanted to vote once and they wanted to vote for a candidate. And there had been examples where second preference did play an element. So I think it was tactical, if I'm perfectly honest. I don't think it was a mistake. I think where we have seen mistakes is whereby, mainly in parish councils, where you are voting for a lot of people. You're voting for perhaps 13. You feel a bit rushed in the ballot in the polling station, and you put 14 down. I think those are the ones where they're by mistake. I think generally speaking, I think our electorate is actually a lot wiser than we sometimes give it credit for. I think it knows what it's doing and it does it appropriately. So yeah.
I know from previous elections, yeah, you're right, but I can remember that there were candidates voted for just twice, for example. That was a spoiled ballot. Or people who just ticked the second preference. I would argue those votes were clearly accidents rather than a sort of tactical vote. If someone's just picked up the ballot paper and voted only for a second candidate and no first candidate, that obviously prejudiced their vote completely, didn't it? I would say that was possibly a mistake. and obviously moving on to first past the post, you avoid those accidents completely.
We are, although we're bringing it back for Metro mayors. It's in the devolution bill. Yes. So it won't come back for the Doncaster mayor, but it will come back for the Simca mayor.
Okay, thank you. Rob?
Thank you, Trina, for the presentation. That was really useful and good to see some of the data in the pack as well. It must be a big expense for the council to run an all-out election for mayor, ward councillors, parish council in terms of sending out the mayoral booklets with the kind of information on postal ballot packs on the day, the voter sheets, staffing numbers for both during the daytime and night time. Are you able to sort of say how much the election cost the council as a whole?
I can't because we've not finished. So we're still gathering in some of the invoices. Obviously, there's 167 polling stations to pay, so we're still on with a lot of that and getting our invoices in from Royal Mail. The biggest cost with any election is postage, and the postage costs have doubled this year. So it is much more than what we've had in the past. It's really, really expensive postage costs, and unfortunately, we've got no other option than Royal Mail to send things out. So once we've got some figures, you can certainly get in touch and we can see what breakdown we can give out. But yeah, it is mainly postage. And when the law requires us to send a booklet to every individual that's on the register, sometimes 6 people in a property, and that's what we have to do. It is very expensive, and the PCC one went to online. So until some changes are made, then we can't cut costs.
Thank you. Any follow-on from you, Rob?
There is, but I believe Scott has comes back as well.
Scott?
I was going to say that the theory is that all-out elections are cheaper than thirds, which is obviously the traditional method, which some places, I think Sheffield still do. So they elect every 4 years, as you probably know. And so you combine in the hire of rooms and the staffing costs. Obviously, we're having mayoral, all-out wards and parishes altogether. So the costs are sort of defrayed across that. So that's the theory, that it is cheaper, apart from anything else around consistency and things being less turbulent for the remainder of the 4-year period. So that is an attention, as Trina says, that the postage costs are getting exponentially high, and that is a growing problem for all of us.
Thank you. Rob, did you have a follow-on?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We've got a by-election coming up, so that'll cost the authority as well. Do we know sort of projected numbers for how much that might cost? I speak as well from the last by-election from which I was elected on, so wondering if you've got sort of figures from last year that you might be able to project going forward.
Again, it's difficult because postage increases have doubled this year, so I can't say it'll be the same as last year. The thing with by-elections is every by-election's different because every area is different, the number of polling stations needed. So for Bentley, there's 11, whereas another ward, it might be 8, and the polling station costs are different for every station. If we need a portable unit, they cost with a portable unit, depending on if they need a generator, a toilet, what they need, £1,000. If there's no portable units, then the cost is going to be much cheaper for those polling stations. The law then requires us to have 2 members of staff on each polling station, so we can't cut costs there. So 11 polling stations, 11 presiding officers, 11 poll clerks. Postage costs, we've got to send a poll card to every elector, then we've got the postal votes. I've looked at some rough figures, and with what the postage increase costs are, the printing's very cheap, the postage is the highest. I'm saying approximately could be 25,000, if not more, because more than 15,000 that is postage. It's expensive, and it is for any by-election. And the parish and town councils, they can choose if they send poll cards or not, and some choose not to, but then our turnout is just so low. Hatfield have chosen not to send poll cards next week, and we did have that last year, and we had 5 stations and 1 station no one even turned out to vote. We had 22 people vote in the stations for that one, and the cost is a lot, and we understand that, but then people don't turn out and vote, so it's catch-22 on saving money. Unfortunately, we can't do that with our ward elections, but yeah, and the town and parishes, we recharge what costs to them.
Trina, one question from me. A really useful report, thank you so much, and also second Gemma's thoughts. First time I'd been through a process and been up close and personal with voting, and I was massively impressed with the scale of the logistics and how professional the process works. So I think just for the minutes, I think that's worth noting. Really useful report. I guess one question from me is, we have a body of insights from this report. I'm sort of interested to know how we move those insights into improvements in the next cycle, so we can actually, we can become slicker with how we run elections. Can you maybe talk about that?
Yep. So we have after every election we have a debrief, team debrief, and we talk about some of the things that perhaps could be improved on, what could be done better. For the postal vote rejections, we obviously write to all those people, so they have the opportunity to have a look and see what might have gone wrong, what they did wrong, so hopefully they don't do that wrong the next time. For us, we have a meeting with our printers, so we talk about anything that didn't happen right or something that came with an error, and then we have a catch-up with them. And everything along the lines we record throughout the election. So with our software, there might have been an issue, so then we have a catch-up with our software after. And then we've got a few things, because we had all-outs on perhaps what we feel we didn't provide candidates with enough, or information that we need to put on, and we share best practice, and every election's different. Every election there's something new, and it's, right, we must remember that for next time. So we remember that for next time, but then there's a whole new thing that comes forward that perhaps, we didn't think could happen. And then we share that. So from these elections, I've actually spoke to colleagues, West Yorkshire and South Yorkshire, that have got all-outs next year, and said, these are the things that kept cropping up for us. This is new. This is something big. This is something that hasn't happened in the past. Think about it for your candidate briefings, perhaps do this early on. So we share that as well between us. So not only do we take it from our own elections, but we do gather from others as well on anything that they could help us with for future elections.
Great, thank you. That's good to hear. Any final questions before we move on? John? Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next agenda item, registration activity. Trina, I think we're back to you. Sorry, just before we do move on, can I just make sure I'm getting the formalities right? Do members note the report? Yes, great, thank you. Trina.
Thanks, Chair. So this one's a lot about registration and Canvas, and some of the things that we have a statutory duty to do each year. A lot of you probably aren't familiar with Canvas and the ins and outs of it, and of what we have to do. So if anybody wants to have a more detailed catch-up on Canvas at another time, then let me know. Each year, what we need to do is we need to write to every property in Doncaster, and we give them the opportunity to let us know if we've got any errors on our register. So we write to the properties and say, this is what we believe is on our register to be accurate. Please let us know if there's been a change. Now, to help us with this, we have to produce our data to the central data, which is held by the government. What we do is we do a data upload. It has a look at Department for Work and Pensions data. It does a data match, and it comes back and tells us what properties we believe are still correct that have been no changes to, and what properties have had a change. Now, it could just be one person's moved in or out in that property, or the whole household's completely changed in that property. Even if it's just one, that we then have to get in touch with that property and find out what's changed. So we do our initial data matching, and it puts it into 3 categories. The first one is there are no changes, and we need to write to those people and just say, this is what we believe we've got on the register, is it correct? They don't have to reply. That's a new change. It never used to be like that. We used to have to get everybody to respond. So it has helped us a lot, not having to get every household in Doncaster to come back to us. We have Route 2s. Route 2s are the properties where we believe there's been a change, and we need to try and find out what that change is. And Route 3s are homes of multiple occupancy and care homes. So Doncaster's progress so far, we've just started Canvas. We have to do it between the 2nd of June and the 29th of August for our initial data match. And then after we've done that, we continue up until the 1st of December to try and get responses. So it has only just started, and we are at the beginning of it. We did our data matching on the 17th of June. We uploaded our data to Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. They did our data match, and at that time we had 224,233 registered electors and 147,592 properties. We had 104,169, so just over 70% of those properties successfully match in that Route 1 on that initial data matching. A total of 43,375 properties appear to have changed or are empty. So this also includes the empty properties where we do have quite a lot in Doncaster to be put under the Route 2. Since we did that data match, so since the 17th of June, we've managed to do a lot of data mining. So this is where we look at our council held records. We are able to have a look at council records such as council tax, customer services, etc., and try and find where the information's still correct, where there's been no changes, and that we can be 100% sure that there is no other changes to that property. And we've managed to match a further 11,168 properties so far. So we've now got 78.15% properties into Route 1 and 32,207 properties for the Route 2. So the 32,000 is average of what we usually have every year, year on year. And what happens is we'll continue to try and match those properties. We'll have a look with our council tax on what's empty. If there are any long-standing empty properties where they might have said that they're getting redone, refurbed, something's happening, knocked down, and we'll be able to move them off the system, because there's no point us chasing and posting letters to those properties if no one's ever going to be there. And when we get to the end of our stage where we've tried to get some communication from those Route 2s over and over again, so email, letters, different ways of data mining, we then do foot canvass and telephone canvass on properties. So depending on what areas, we have regular ones where we get no responses year after year. We're trying to do some different things to see if we can get responses from those properties, sending more detailed letters on why they need to be on. It's not just for voting, there is other reasons to be on the register, and they do have a legal obligation to be on the register even if they're not voting. So we are doing a lot of work with that. Our Route 3 care homes, we work with those throughout the year. As you can imagine, it is a bigger turnover in care homes, so it's difficult to keep on top of that. So what we do is we keep in touch with the care homes. They let us know when people are moving in or when they've moved out. And then we do update it, and then we do one right at the end of Canvas, because just in a matter of 6 weeks there could have been a lot of changes in those care homes. So we do wait again until the end of Canvas. And what we have to do is get the register as up to date as accurate, and then on the 1st of December every year the register's reproduced again. So you'll see on your ward registers, you'll have elector numbers on there. Some of them have the /1, /2, and all those ones are the ones that have gone on throughout the year. We get to the 1st of December and everyone gets renumbered again and gets a brand new number. Some are similar, some are the same, some might have moved just one digit. It all depends on how many people have moved in and out of each ward and area. So that's what the canvas is, and it is an ongoing project where we contact people, get in touch with people to try and get our information on the register as accurate as possible. The other thing that we're doing under registration, the Elections Act in 2022 brought in a lot of changes for elections. The biggie was voter ID. And it has been a lot of changes, but they didn't all happen at once. It's been a rollout over certain months and certain years. And we are coming to the final stages of the Elections Act that we have to do. And this is the last one on there, the postal vote reapplication. Postal voters' signatures would last for 5 years. And we would write out every year in January to everyone's who had hit that 5-year mark. And what happened under the Elections Act where it got reduced to 3 years. So everybody needed to refresh their signature every 3 years. But what they did were they decided not to have any refresh signatures for 2024 and 2025. So that's made a lot of signatures that now need to be refreshed this year, not only because we've missed 2 years, but because it's been reduced from 5 down to 3. So we've got 51,210 signatures that need a whole brand new application. And that new application needs a national insurance number, a signature and a date of birth. To help, they have made postal vote applications online. The downfall is they've taken away the way that the forms are done much quicker. They are taking a lot longer now because the system requires you to go through the online portal and then back into the system. So they've helped one way, but made it slower the other. And it is much slower now to do postal vote forms than what it was before this came on. We didn't want to do this before the election. Obviously, we didn't want anybody not to be able to vote in May, as I'm sure you will feel the same too. So we didn't start our write-out at the beginning of the year. We've waited till the elections have taken place, and now we've just started writing to these people to tell them that they do need to refresh their signature and date of birth if they want a postal vote. The downfall with this is because we have fallow years for the next few years and no elections till 2028, everyone's going to need to refresh again for the 2028 elections. So unfortunately we can't not do this year because we've not got elections coming up. We've got to do it. It is a huge cost. We are pushing people to go online. So we've started with our Canvas emails, and on the Canvas emails we've added a bit in about saying refresh your postal vote. It will expire on the 31st, it expires on the 31st of January 2026, but we're not telling people that. We've kind of told them they need to apply sooner so that we don't get 51,000 wait until the last minute, so that we can continue to get them up to date and on the system as soon as we can and refreshed. We are pushing people online. Obviously, where we don't have email addresses, we're having to write to those people. Any communication that's going out, we're adding the postal vote refresh on there to try and get as many coming back before we then send the letters out to the people that just need to refresh. Because the more that people do it by other ways of seeing information, is going to be much cheaper for the council on sending letters out. We are waiting to hear from central government if they're going to give us any more funding. We do have some funding left in our Elections Act funding that we received. It won't be enough to cover the write-out, depending on how many chase-ups we need to do. As I mentioned, postage is the huge cost of anything. So we are waiting to hear, and what sometimes happens is if there's been any costs, I've done it a few times in the past, I keep a track, keep a record, I keep all the information and a big audit trail, and then I do put in for a justification-led bid to try and get some funding back, have a lot of meetings with the central government and put a claim in as to why we should have that. So hopefully when we get to the end of the postal vote refresh, if it has cost a lot more than what we've got in the budget, I will do that again to try and get some of that funding back, because it is a new burden, it is something new that they've done, I do believe if they just left it at 5 years and then reduced it down to 4 and continued the write-out every year, we wouldn't have this huge write-out. And what it's also going to do is have a knock-on effect. So everyone's done it. If this 51,000 do it, they're going to have to do it again in 3 years. So we're always, every 3 years, going to have this big write-out until people move or change their postal vote preferences. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much, Trina. That was a very clear report. Questions or comments? Nick? Oh, sorry. Rob?
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple, Trina. The first one's just a comment of the absolute mess that it's caused for yourselves to have to do this every 3 years to write out to 50,000 households. And you say that the government at the time put a pot of money available for councils to chip away at and use, but that hasn't really, well, it's only really covered 2 years since it came in, so it's not a sufficient pot of money. How likely is it that you'll be able to put in those justification bids and get money back from central government?
So we've recently had a meeting with them and they've said they're going to come back and let us know if they're actually going to give us some more upfront funding for this. I don't think they've realised, especially for us, with not having elections, having a couple of fallow years now, that we're going to do this, and then, unless there's by-elections, they're not going to be used, and then we're going to have to do it again. I also think if people realise there's no elections, they might not actually bother with their postal vote, and they might not reapply, which will then cause us to chase. And then when we do come to the May's elections in 2028 for the CAM, for the Combined Authority, at a busy time, we're going to have everyone reapplying. So rather than it's staggering now, like we've had for the last few years, we're going to have this at every time we have an election, when it's already very busy, having 50,000 postal vote applications to process as well, and that'll have a knock-on effect about postal votes going out later. So people might not necessarily be in that first stage. They'll apply after poll cards have gone out, and they'll be in the second stage, and then they'll be ringing wanting to know why they've not had it in that first bulk. So it's going to have a big on effect, not just on this, but all the things going forward as well. The justification-led bid, they have told us, has been something throughout for all the Elections Act changes. We have had really good, healthy amounts for every stage. So when we came to voter ID, we had a good amount of money to buy new things for stations and put flyers out and things like that. So I'm hoping that they will give us some extra funding for this. But certainly they are saying that justification-led bids are always open. So it's just when we get to that stage, if they'll fund us completely for anything that's gone over. I've managed to get, successfully a couple of times, probably about 4 times in the past. So hopefully it shouldn't be a problem. But until they tell us if they're going to give us any funding now, I'm not sure. Certainly going to keep a track of what everything's cost anyway, just in case.
Fab, thank you for that. I've been checking my emails because I know yesterday I did receive an email with update your electoral register data, so yeah, I've got that. On HMOs, we obviously do have HMOs in Doncaster, but there'll be other local authorities that have more. How have you spoken to colleagues in other areas to how they deal with refreshing HMO electoral data, and sort of what's the experience like in refreshing it in Doncaster?
So we always share good practice. We have regular meetings. We have joint South and West Yorkshire electoral services meetings, and we talk about what's worked well in some areas, and then we share that information. So if somebody's done a really good letter that's worked, perhaps for someone not registering, that might be a little bit more, to the point, and not as nice, and it's worked, then we'll share that and we'll all have a go, and then we'll feedback how it's worked. So what we do with HMOs is, any buildings really, so such as high-rise flats as well, where it's difficult to get into a building if we're not getting responses. We look at how we can contact managers, key holders, it just depends what the building is. A landlord that perhaps has got access for quite a number of properties, and try and get information that way. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the person that's telling us. If they say to us, oh, that's empty, we would say, right, can I just check? And we come back and say, who's told us it's empty? So that if anything comes back to us, we can say where we've got that information from and why. And so HMOs especially, we try to get and gather that information from other people if we're unable and unsuccessful to get information. It just depends on what the property is. Some of the buildings where we might have people quite in and out regularly, where it might just be like a stopping house or something, we don't necessarily put them on the register, and we do get in touch with them more closer to an election and say, have you got anybody that's there fixed for a bit longer, anybody that you think will want to vote, and then we'll get them on the register at that time. So it might not necessarily be at canvass, but it might be we'll pick it up again when it comes to an election. It's just different. We have to work differently with each of our properties that we've got out there. So we do keep a file in a register and then review it again at a later stage.
Fab, thank you. And last one from me, Chair, then I'll stop hogging the mic. Does the council, and is it possible to work with estate agents and letting agents so that when people do move properties, one of the documents in the bundle is a electoral registration form?
Yep, so we've done some of this again in the past, especially with new houses. So when people move into new properties, they get kind of like an information pack and things. So we have given those leaflets and information. What we do is we work with council tax as well. So when somebody's moved into a property, council tax asks them as well about the register. So our council tax department and our customer services department have what we call a web-based version of the register. So they can't see too much information, but they can see people's names registered at a property. So if somebody new tells council tax they've moved in, council tax will say, is there anybody else I can register them for you now? And that'll put them on our register. So they do that. And when the new houses and the estate agents, we keep in touch and get updates from them. So if we knew there's new properties, we'll also say to them, do you know which ones are moving in when? So they'll have phases, so that we aren't sending letters out to the new builds that are on the register. They're on council tax, but actually no one's moving into them for the next 2 months. So we try to do that as well, so that we're not basically just chasing no one and sending letters out for the sake of it. So yeah, we try to get in touch with people and keep doing that throughout the year to try and build that. So when we come to canvass, we've got a contact or someone to give us a bit more information. But again, we don't know always where there's new builds. There is going to be an email going out to all members about canvass this week, and it will say a bit like, if you know of anything in your area, community groups as well that we could maybe use and get some information out to say, this is real. It's not spam, you know, it's not anyone trying to get information out here, but it is us, it is the council, it comes from this email address, it is real, please update your records, and as much information we can get out to tell people that it is real, and to do that will help us not to spend more time posting and canvassing those properties.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Trina. Any other final questions or thoughts, comments? John.
Thank you, Chair. I believe I've read somewhere, may have got it wrong, that there's some boundary reversion analysis coming up. Necessary, costly, or have we got that wrong?
So between every 10 and 15 years, so not before the 10 years, not after the 15 years, we have the boundary review that will ask us to do a review on our boundaries, our councillors, our areas. So the last one was done before the 2015 elections, before they went to all out. So we've just hit that stage where the review finished, I think, in 2014. I think Nick will probably know a bit more than me, because it was just before my time. I just came in as it finished. So we've now hit that 10 years where we have to do a review. So the Boundary Commission have been in touch with us. It's very early stages, and said we are due to do a boundary review. Some of our wards are really big, quite a lot of our wards actually, almost half of them. The number of electorates in the wards are pretty huge, and some areas look like they might need splitting because they've got too many electors in them. So until we have that initial meeting with the Boundary Commission and then talk about what size our wards are required to be. We will obviously, you'll all be involved and all included. All members are consulted. We'll look at our areas, see what the Boundary Commission recommend. If it means making more wards, if it means merging any wards, it means any more councillors, things like that. And also we get involved and say, do you feel there's any properties that are the lines and the boundaries aren't drawn correctly? And we have quite a lot of a big consultation with the public as well on that. But yeah, you're heavily involved in it. We are going to be doing one soon, and it'll be done before the next all-out elections. It has to be implemented before that.
Thank
So,
you,
yeah,
very
it's
clear.
coming.
Cheers.
Thank you, Trina. Any final questions, thoughts? Do members note the report? Thank you. Just before we move on to the final agenda point, Councillor Briggs, welcome to the meeting. Would you mind just taking your seat on the front row? And just for the minutes, Councillor Briggs joins at agenda item number 7. Agenda item number 7, temporary appointments of members to Moss and District Parish Council. Scott, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a relatively small item, but it is probably the most formal item. So, Chair, when you take it, you might want to ask for a proposer, a seconder, and then an agreement from members, rather than just noting. In April, when nominations were sought for the Moss and District Parish Council, only 2 out of 7 possible councillors came forward. So only 2 were elected. That means that the council is in quora and therefore unable to act. What normally happens when there are vacancies and not sufficient people come forward to be councillors is that there can be a co-option process. Unfortunately, that requires a meeting of the council and it's in quora, so it can't act. So you end up with a rather sticky situation. The law allows this council to co-opt individuals onto the council for the purpose of holding a co-option meeting. And our normal process is to co-opt the City of Doncaster Council ward councillors onto that parish council. And we've spoken to the 3 councillors Francis Jackson, Vicky Lawson and Gerald Squire, who have all agreed that they would be happy to take part in that process. So this agenda item is to ask committee to approve that process, that an order be made co-opting those 3 CDC ward councillors onto Moss and District Parish Council for the sole purpose of having a co-option meeting. Once that co-option meeting is completed and Moss becomes quorate again, it can therefore take its own actions and therefore the 3 ward councillors can step aside. Obviously, if one of the ward councillors fancies being on that council for a long time, then they should apply through a co-option process. We wouldn't be proposing to co-opt anyone on there on a long-term basis, but all 3 councillors have been spoken to in that regard and are happy to act. So it's to ask for your support for that, Chair.
Thank you, Scott. Just before we move on to approve the recommendations, any questions, thoughts or comments for Scott? No, thank you. Can I request a proposer? Yep, thank you, Rob. And seconder, John? Okay, 2 seconders there. This is a popular one. Good, so that the recommendations have been approved. So that concludes the business of today's meeting. I'd like to thank you all for attending, and I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.